What's up, Brian? How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. Before we get going here, I want to make sure the audience understands that Brian's like my brother and probably one of my best friends. So anything he says about me, it's a lie. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. I don't know
That's generous of you.
what his what his agenda is today. No, I'm just kidding. Brian Bohnert is the founder and head mechanic at the world famous Denver legend Rinovelo bike shop. And I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about your shop a little bit and talking about some fun rides in Denver. You ready to do this?
Now let's do it. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Let's start with your beginnings into cycling. Like, how did you get into bikes? Because I know that you're known for doing these like incredible, like vintage turnaround jammy bikes, but also you're an expert mountain biker. You look pretty good in spandex, so you kind of
A
have the
couple
whole
years
thing.
ago,
How did you
maybe.
get into bikes?
Let's see. That's a great question. I think, and one of the guiding philosophies of the shop is that, everybody remembers their first bike. They show me pictures. They describe it. They know the day and the Christmas they got it. And I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I remember my first bike. I started on a big wheel. I don't know if you remember what those are. I'm showing my age here. I customized that as a kid, and
Nice.
I don't know. My dad always had stuff around. He's a farm boy from Pennsylvania, so there was always things to work on, and I just sort of gravitated towards making these Franken bikes, which is like 4 or 5 bikes that don't work, and you sort of break them down and you make one that does. And I kind of was self-taught that way, and for me, the bike, my first bike was a sense of freedom. I lived in the suburbs of Chicago, and my school was a couple miles away. And this is pre-cell phones, and my parents would just send me out the door and I'd ride around and, eventually start going to your friend's house. And I guess that's the best way to describe it. It's just a sense of freedom. Um, and so, I'd been riding, but I wasn't riding competitively. I think that sort of kicked in when I got to college, and mountain bikes were becoming more of a thing. Courses of like fully rigid steel mountain bike that we were riding through the woods in Michigan.
Yeah.
And, I got a job at a shop, in college, and this guy was a local legend. He was 80 something and still kicking. And he was I call him kind of my sensei, my bike sensei. He taught me how to wheel build. He taught me all the little details and things that you might miss if you don't get your hands dirty and know how all this stuff works. And so I worked at that shop through college, and I started racing mountain bikes competitively at that point.
So let's talk about podcasts for a second. You're listening to one, which is awesome, by the way. Thank you so much. But have you ever thought about being a guest on a podcast? Like, seriously, imagine sharing your story and your expertise and your business all on shows where your ideal customers are already listening. Kitcaster connects founders and entrepreneurs, professionals, with podcasts that actually make sense for their brand. No pitching, no guessing. You just have great conversations on great shows. And the best part, Kitcaster handles everything. You just show up and bring your A game, Kitcaster does the rest. This is hands down one of the easiest ways to grow your personal brand and just create a wellspring of content for short video, for blog posts, for speaking engagements, for whatever. So if you've been thinking, yeah, I really need to step up my content game, go to kitcaster.com and apply today. Now back to the show.
I have a medal to prove it. I did finish third one time.
Nice.
I
That's
don't know.
amazing. And
Dude,
people might not understand that like early 90s mountain biking was so exciting. Like when Rock Shocks came out and you started to see front suspension, it was like, dude, this is next level.
Yeah, game changer, right? So, that was probably late 90s is when, we started seeing front suspension get onto bikes. And the mountain bike movement sort of started out in Marin, California, where they were just taking little cruisers and tinkering around with them, affectionately named clunkers, where they would just take these things and run them down the hill. And it just kind of went from there. So yeah, I kind of, that bug hit me hard. I remember in college, um, when I should have been studying, I was like looking at bike components and, buying and selling bikes to people on the campus. And actually I started building like Franken bikes for like roommates and people that just wanted little towny bikes. And I just saw I don't know, the utilitarianism of it, gets people out of their cars. And they're fun. It's like everybody puts a smile on their face when they're riding. And so that kind of bit me. And then I actually moved to Colorado I was racing mountain bikes for a little bit, and I was working at Wheat Ridge Cyclery, which is a shop out in Wheat Ridge, 38th and Wadsworth or something. It's massive. It's the highest grossing business in Wheat Ridge. It's a bike shop. But you walk in there and it's almost overwhelming. I mean, there's like racks and racks of $10,000 bikes, almost unapproachable at this point. When I started the shop, that was one of the guiding stars, is that we wanted to make bikes approachable and not too intimidating, and just like kind of bring it back to people's childhoods of when they got their first bike. So, yeah. And I've just been into it ever since then. So it's been kind of a lifelong thing for me.
Okay, let me ask you something. Do you have a B2B or tech brand that want to get your message out to the right people? Like the people that actually care about your product and offering and are willing to make a purchase? Well, let me put you on to Wildcast. Wildcast is a secret weapon for brands that want to advertise on podcasts. And not just any podcast, we're talking about the shows that your audience is actually listening to, that your customers are actually listening to, that your prospects are actually listening to. These are host-read ads that move the needle in your business. It's personal, it's targeted, and honestly, it's one of the best ways to create real connections with your audience. And the best part, Wildcast takes care of it all. They match you with the perfect shows, they manage all of the content, they report, and they manage all of the payment distribution. So all you have to do is sit back and watch the magic happen. If that sounds like something you need, head over to gowildcast.com and apply today. Start turning listeners into loyal customers. Seriously, you'll thank me. Go to gowildcast.com. That is gowildcast.com. Back to the show. Yeah. Well, I made the mistake. I brought a little rock hopper up to Durango. I went to Durango in 96, 97. And I was like, oh, I'll go mountain biking. Dude, right. The vertical in Durango is ridiculous. I took like 2 climbs. I was like, pass. I'm done.
Right.
So
it's like, can we have a lift, please?
So at some point you kind of transitioned. Of course, you're still mountain biking, but now talk about Rinovelo and kind of the mission behind that company.
Yeah. So like I said, when we started, we were trying to get away a little bit from the big box stuff and a little bit more towards the craftsmanship and the creativity of building bikes, and repurposing bikes is really our bread and butter. Where everybody has these old 10 speeds from the 60s and 70s and 80s tucked away in their garage, flat tires, dust collecting them. And so what we'll do is we'll take that and strip it down to the frame and build them up for useful bikes for people. And like I love mountain biking. If you cut me open, I'm a mountain biker, but it is like, it's gear intensive. And even in Colorado, you're loading up a bike rack, your gear, you're driving somewhere, you're unloading and you're mountain biking and then driving. And so what I've sort of, it's sort of developed into, I found a little niche in the industries that nobody really wants to work on those old bikes. Everybody likes shiny and new things, which we do too. New Bike Day is amazing. but, um, like we started repurposing these bikes and I call them urbane bikes or like urbane rides. It's not like
I like it.
an urban ride, conjures all, guys in jorts and tattoos riding fixed gear, um, ripping through the city, which is, fun, but not for everybody. But it's like an urbane ride. We might stop and check out a new brewery, or we'll kind of have a loop in mind, but it becomes sort of an adventure. And so I'm building bikes for like personal, like people have like each bike is custom. So, um, and we're not a frame builder. And sometimes there's a misconception. So like we start with a frame, and I'm always on the lookout for old vintage frames, and we'll build them up. And what I ask people to do, which is sometimes hard for people, is to come up with 5 words. And I think you've been through that process a couple times of
Yeah.
what do you want your bike to be and feel like at the end of the process. And so, if the customer gives me a little bit of that creative liberty, I'll make those things happen. So that's we're a small shop. We work on everything. We've got tooling to do brake bleeds, suspension work, and things like that, and modern stuff. But our kind of heart and soul and passion is repurposing vintage bikes for the modern world.
Yeah. And they're absolutely gorgeous. For anyone who's listening to this, definitely go to rinovelo.com and check out some of these custom builds. Ultimately, I think it's about the drip. It's about having the bike that matches your outfit. And now you have a quiver of bikes. Maybe you have 4 or 5 bikes. So depending on
Yes.
what you feel like wearing, it kind of depends on which bike you're going to pull out of the quiver.
So you get it. You get it.
Yeah. That's
Like
what it's all about. I mean,
Yes.
I can testify because some of the best moments of my life have happened on a Rinovelo bike. And
Oh,
I'll put
man.
it this way, like there's nothing I like more than a compliment from an older black man. You know what
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
saying?
man. You
Where
get
they're
those
like, "Hey
like
man,
props.
nice bike." Yeah.
And you're like,
And I got
okay.
that a couple times. Yeah, I was like, "Oh, cool," and then I like go around the corner and like my heart's expanding like the Grinch
Right.
at the end.
Right.
Like I feel so good. I couldn't believe I
Right.
got a compliment,
Stand up a little bit
So yeah.
stronger, you ride a little bit faster. Well, and that's the thing that like
Yeah.
you mentioned the quiver, and sometimes I have to ask people like, do you know what a quiver is? And start with that. Um, and so, you draw the arrow out that it serves that purpose. And the other analogy that I'll sometimes use with people that are looking for a bike is, do you have shoes? Do you wear shoes? And you wouldn't wear stilettos to the rodeo, right? And and you wouldn't wear steel-toed boots to the wedding. So like the bike is the same way. I sort of like I see it that way, where it kind of depends on what your ride is going to be. It kind of depends on what you want to accomplish with your ride. I mean, if you're bike packing, like a 3-day bike packing trip, you're not going to be riding spandex with skinny tires. So, that, I really, really hit that home. And the worst thing you can say when you come in is like, I already have a bike. I have a pair of shoes
Of course you
too.
do.
Of course, you were
Yeah.
wearing at one point, you had a short you were wearing. Like, has anybody seen my short?
Yeah, there was a
Like,
short
yeah,
that I
I
wore
think,
quite frequently.
yeah, you had a short and a shoe, and like that was it. What else do you need, man?
It's it. Well, yeah, you keep the same shorts, you change the bike depending on your mood, it's the
Yeah,
perfect
for sure.
a lot of people describe it as these bikes, you could spend 500 to 1,000 bikes or $1,000 really tricking out one of these
Yeah,
custom bikes, so
for
it
sure.
gives you a little bit of room to have several, which makes it really fun because
Right.
what they call like the last mile, right? So there's been a lot of success, or at least there was on paper with the scooters or
Yeah.
with e-bikes where people are like, "Oh, I'm at home. I want to go out to the brewery down the road. It's that last mile, So on a Friday, Saturday night, you pull out one of these bikes, one of these Rinovelo bikes, So it totally matches, You've got
Yeah.
one gear, you got three gears, but you're not like putting in, you're not, you don't have an intention of a time limit. You're really riding your bike for the absolute joy of doing it. And that's my
Right.
favorite thing about it. Like you
Yeah.
always say, ride your bike,
Yeah.
and it makes it so much fun to do it.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I think you've been along with a couple rides. It's always more fun to do it with friends too. And so, the final mile is the thing that, you know, um, I really want to see urban planners kind of focus on a little bit more, make it a little bit more bike centric because, scooters are whatever, they've got their place, but you've seen some of the effects of that. And then like, we had the um what were they called? The B cycles. And that was a good
Yeah.
concept too. The problem is that that's a docking situation. And like those were gone within a year after the dockless movement came about 5 years ago. Like why are you going to like plan your trip around where's the closest dock? And then you still end up walking, And so like when everybody has their own bike, like my utopia is everybody is getting where they need to be. They're having fun while they're at it. And it's like, we're not like doing camelbacks and spandex and clipping pedals most of the time. I mean, like there is a time for that. Uh, but these are very functional bikes. They're like, it's really pushing a mode of transportation that becomes a lifestyle. And that's my favorite thing when I build bikes for people that becomes their main mode of transportation. I basically say like, you've got a 5 mile radius, right? And like anywhere in that circle, you're riding your bike. You don't have to pay for parking. Um, you don't have to download an app or anything. You just get on your bike and ride. And it's so simple. It's so simple, but like to have people wrap their mind around that is sometimes a learning curve. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, you're a good educator. And, I know there's two kind of benchmark rides that you've got every year, the Tour de Zac and then the Tweed Ride, you
Right.
know, but you're doing rides all the time. People can check out your schedule and see what kind of rides you're doing. But for the people listening to the show of Denver, Colorado, what are some great rides? What are some of your favorite rides around town that someone that could do one of these like 1 to 5 mile loops?
Yeah. Perfect. Great question. I mean, the nice thing about the bikes that we build and that I like to put people on is that like, I mean, you can do a little bit of everything. So if you're into gravel riding, you could do that. If you're into like, fast city riding, you can do that. Couple of my favorite rides, just because, I know the route so well. I've ridden it so many times is like we leave from the shop and we take the, Clear Creek Trail out to Commerce City, and it's 90% off of the road. And I think that sometimes is a barrier for people too. They don't want to get on the road and mess with traffic, which I granted that's fair. We're trying to educate drivers that bikes belong on the road. And I think Denver's actually doing a pretty good job of that, making some dedicated bike lanes and things. Um, so we go out to Clear Creek and then out to Commerce City, hop off there, and then we'll ride up to like Dick's Sporting Goods Park, if you can picture that.
Yep.
And then actually, what I've started exploring a little bit over the past couple of years is the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. I don't know if you are familiar with that. People think it's an actual arsenal. It's not. It is. It used to be. And it's a wildlife preserve, and it's right like smack dab in the middle of Commerce City. And it's miles of gravel. There's some single track. You can take the whole like outer loop, and I think it's 14 miles. So,
Cool.
depending
They
on
got
what
buffaloes out there, right?
they do, the bird watching is amazing. And I think they've got you can snipe hunt out there, do some of that.
Big
Yeah.
snipe hunter, are
There's
you?
a big snipe hunter. So like that loop is fun, man. Like we'll go there and, like if you want to tack on the Rocky Mountain Arsenal loop, you can. If not, then you just kind of come back, or you loop back. You go up through Dahlia Street, and we just kind of do a big loop from there. That's a fun one. The other fun one that I've found is you just get on the Platte River down to Confluence Park, and I know like you kind of got to pick your days and things because you're dodging like rollerbladers and uh, dogs and uh, everything in between. But once you get past like the Confluence Park, like Cherry Creek, just head south, and that you can take that all the way down to Chatfield or Cherry Creek Reservoir. And again, you could
Yeah.
do like you could do a lollipop loop. And there's a few like real easy single track gravel trails down there. Kind of depends what you're feeling, what your bike is. And then you can loop back and, grab a coffee or grab a beer. Raices is right there. Can you picture where I'm at in your mind?
I
Raices
think
Brewing
so.
Company.
Yeah, yeah. Cherry Creek.
Yeah. Well, it's right down by, Meow Wolf and Mile High.
Oh,
The,
yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah.
the
Totally.
brewery's right there. It's beautiful. It's right off of the path, and they've got, they pop the garage doors, and on a summer day, it's beautiful. It's right there along the river.
Yeah,
So
Races
that,
is awesome.
yeah.
From there
So
too,
those,
you can go up by the stadium, and there's like, what's that spot right there? It's on 26th, I think, or 23rd. 23rd. I'm trying to think. It's a brewery. They got really good like cauliflower. The
the
buffalo
Buffalo Wings,
wings?
yeah. Is that it might be Little Machine Brewing is over there. I don't know. If you ride far enough in Denver, you're going to run into a brewery. So there's some around. The other fun ride that, everybody thinks that they have to head west. Like when you get out of Denver, you can ride out 32nd all the way to the Coors. Um, you know, um, and then that green belt through Wheat Ridge, you can loop that back down then through um, Wheat Ridge and back into Denver. So it really depends on kind of what you're feeling, what kind of riding you want to do, what pace you want to do. Um, One of my customers just started last year a bike club, which is something that has bike shops have done in the past where they'll like it's like a meeting point, right? And so you call it the bad bike club, his name. So it's the hashtag BBC. Um, but we launched that last fall, and we had about 15, 20 guys, and it was and girls. It's not too pacey, but he wanted to have like two options. So like if somebody shows up in spandex and clipless, there's a ride for that. And if somebody shows up and chacos and jorts, there's a ride for that too. So look for that in the spring. We're gonna advertise that a little bit more. And Rinovelo is the main sponsor behind that, and it's the start and end point for the rides. But
Killer.
we're just trying to get people out on their bikes one way or the other, even if it's like going to the Rapids game. We have the Rapids Rough Riders that ride out a couple times a season, and the front office actually supports that and provides bike parking, and they're trying to encourage more people to ride bikes and stuff out there, which is good. I can get on board with that.
Love it. We got a couple minutes here. So, in Denver, we're lucky because we bikes all winter, pretty much, barring a couple
Yeah,
of weeks here and there. What should folks be doing to maintain and take care of their bikes right now, this time of season?
It's a great question. To beat the, well, for one, you try to beat the spring rush. I mean, it's the first after the snow and after the cold, people come out of their caves and they see the sun for the first time and feel that. And it's like a light switch. I mean, like the phone's ringing off the hooks for people that want to get their bikes ready. And most likely they rode them in the fall, they put them away wet, and they've just sat there for the last 2 months. That's not good for your bike. So my recommendation was that before you put it away for the winter, if you decide to do that, put some chain lube on, clean off the dirt, make sure that it's dry. We use a air compressor and sort of like do the air dry, but not everybody has that. You can just take a cloth and wipe it down. And then, you want to make sure that your tires are pumped up over the winter, because what happens is if they sit flat, they sort of like have muscle memory, and you can get a little wobble in your tires when you go to pump them up. So I think those are the two main things, man. Make sure your tires are pumped up. Make sure that your chain is cleaned and lubed, and make sure that it's dry. Don't just tuck it in the shed after your last fall ride and bring it out in the springtime. But we run a spring special for repairs, and we do $100 tunes. We try to turn them around in a couple of days because we know people want to ride. And we'll go through we'll do a power wash, we'll clean the drivetrain, we'll lube and adjust and get you going for the season. If I can get customers on that like 2 times a year, I see your bike, I know what I've done on it, I know how your bike works. That's ideal. And so I have customers that they don't even have to say anything. They just drop it off. I know it. I've got records of what I've done. And, that's the kind of rhythm you want to be on, ideally. But I get it. Like, I own a bike shop, and so like I have access to the tools and things. So I try to keep my bikes that way, but not everybody. But at least one big tune-up a year is kind of what I recommend.
Yeah. Well, space is limited. I got 5 or 6 Rinovelo bikes, and I don't have room for the tools. You just got to have a bike guy. So whoever's listening to Denver, Rinovelo, Brian Bohnert is your bike guy. He take care of it. Thanks for doing this interview, man. What's on tap in closing for Rinovelo in 2025?
Well, in 2025, we've got, we're going to try really hard to create a stock of custom bikes. Like, it's been my goal for the past 2 years to have 10 on the floor ready to go. And we have new bikes ready to go. We've got suppliers that we can order stuff in that's in a couple of days. But what I'd like to do is, I've been looking at some of these frames, and I want to do kind of like my spin on what I think that bike should be. And then just have those ready to roll so people can come in. But that takes time. It takes, like the parts ordering is very specific. Cause you're converting stuff from the 70s, and we're trying to make it like, a modern component group and things. So that all takes time. So that's one thing that we're going to hit hard is have bikes ready to go. And at least people can kind of see what a sample is instead of like showing pictures. And then we're going to try to build the Tweed Ride a little bit bigger this year. And then, we're also going to focus on, the, bike club, side of things, and also the Rapids Rough Riders. So, I don't know. We're going to keep it going, man. But the most important thing is just trying to get people on their bikes, and however we can do that, however we can help to do that, we're going to try.
Tremendous. Thanks for doing this, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, Denver folks, this one's for you. If you love this city as much as I do, you've got to go over to realgooddenver.com. This is a newsletter, it's a podcast, it's a whole vibe. On the podcast, What's Good Denver, we dive into the things that make Denver, Well, Denver. We're talking about restaurant recommendations, local founders, events, and just all around inspiring people that have helped shape the culture in Denver, Colorado. And if you're all about discovering hidden gems, big ideas, and the heartbeat that make Denver, Denver, this is the podcast and newsletter for you. Whether you're a lifelong local, like me, or new to the Denver area, this is your inside guide to all things Denver. So check out realgooddenver.com and listen to the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter. Trust me, it's everything you love about Denver in one place. That's realgooddenver.com. Now back to the show.